everybody. Welcome to our little corner of the internet for Transformation Tuesdays. I am your host, Christy Uffelman of Edge Leadership. I wouldn't be here today talking with all of you had it not been for Mary. And so while there are lots of ways that I can introduce her, I'm actually going to sit back and let her introduce herself to you, and then we'll launch into our conversation together.
Well, thank you, Christy. I think that I have been many thhad I think the way that I'd like to introduce myself is that I'm a very fortunate woman who has had the opportunity to live in the United States at a time um, in which women were allowed to do a lot of things. And I feel very privileged and honored to be a woman that has been able to take care of opportunities. So I see myself as a very, very fortunate woman to be alive at this time. I see myself as a world citizen. I've traveled the world. I have played a lot of roles in my life. I've been a teacher, a professor, a coach, an employee, an employer, a friend, a mentor, a guide, a daughter, a sister. I've played all those roles in my life, a teacher. I think I've had a lot of vocations, and many of those vocations I've overlapped with you, Christy, whether I was working as a consultant or having my own company and coaching and consulting, whether I was a trainer or a teacher or working in human resources, all those were vocations. Pastor at one time. But I think that my true calling is who I really am, and that is a person who sees and sees potential. And I think that's ultimately who I am and who I'm returning to be is a person that can get out of her way enough to practice the gifts that I have been given. And I think that gift came to me very young in life, and that was the ability to be able to see people in their potential. And somehow I've been able to be in vocations and roles that have allowed me to do that and pursue that. So, yeah, that's kind of who I am.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are listening who have either been in any of our Edge cohorts with me as the coach or who have read my book, The Peer Revolution, you know that I quote Dr. Mary Shippy a lot. And for those who haven't, maybe the best place for us to start is to tell a little bit of where we were, and then how maybe we can also share our stories of transition and transformation as we were side by side and then became very intertwined and then went to be side by side again. And so what I would want to say specifically to that is that I'm trying to think, Mary, like, was I 28 when I met you? I was
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
young.
I knew before you were married to Kevin.
Yeah, I was definitely young. And so I was the construction company that I worked for 7 years. The one that I became super passionate about women's leadership after being there. So, what most people don't know is that they were trying to recruit Mary for the job. And Mary said no, but came alongside them, because this is who Mary is, came alongside them and said, but I'll help you find the right person. Does that feel about right? Like, is that what happened, Mary?
Yeah, that's about right. That's about right.
Yeah.
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 And then they
So
introduced me to you.
and yeah, so then they hire me and then end up hiring Mary as my coach to support me as I came into my role in the organization. I was the first female manager that the company had in their 28-year history. And then after 2 years, with Mary's help as my coach, became the head of HR and was the first woman on the executive team. And we were side by side in that. And there were many challenges that I had to face during that time. While I was also so I had my daytime job. And then in my free time, I was facilitating these cohorts of women. Right, I had the cohort of working mothers, and then a cohort of high potential women leaders in Pittsburgh that were across companies and industries, and everybody was meeting in my kitchen, sharing best practices. And then Strong Women, Strong Girls came in and said, "Hey, could you build us a program that we could get some corporate revenue stream in here?" And I started doing that, and that's when I had the moment of, I'm having an impact. I'm fueling my soul in a way that my day job isn't. And then I knew I wanted to leap and go back to being an entrepreneur. So I had been an entrepreneur before, but I had been a solo entrepreneur, solopreneur, I think they're called. And I knew that didn't feel good to me. And Mary knew I was going to leap one way or the other. And I guess that was probably when we were like, well, what does it look like if I came and worked for you?
Yeah, so my curiosity, Christy, is, I think that I have from a very first time that I met you and as I watched you move in the company that you worked for, there was a sense in which I understood that you had a call. Do you know what that call is? Because you've also had very many vocations, you've had
Mhm.
a lot of jobs, you've done a lot of things, but I'm wondering if you could articulate, I think I can, because I've seen it, but I'm wondering if you can articulate what really pulls your heart. What do you think your light is, your gift is, your call is?
I don't know. A gift is a word that gives me pause, but purpose, I do know that I am here to help people feel less alone. And I want to do that by making connections that matter to them, whether that is connecting two people together, or people in an idea, or people in an organization. Like, truly believe I do the work that I do to ensure that people don't feel alone.
Yeah, yeah. I would say that that would be the core of what I saw you doing when you were starting your groups. It was and that was idea for your own sense of purpose and loneliness too.
For
And also I think that that became kind of the center of why you wanted to call people together because you understood that feeling. I mean, I think it's the same for me. Like the reason why I want to practice and feel like I've always been able to see into people was because I also had a longing to be seen.
sure.
And to be seen changes you,
It does.
right? And it changes people. And so when you can see people's call, when you can see their heart and help them continue to explore it, like again, we oftentimes get stuck in the vocation and roles shit stuff, I should say.
Yeah, amen
Sorry
to
about that. But I
that.
think we do because of just our culture. Our culture pushes us to have a career and a title. And that is, the definition in American culture as success. But success to me is when you can really follow the passion of your heart
Mhm.
and find a way to be able to do that. And I think roles serve us. I think vocations serve us, but they're not who we are.
No,
I
ma'am.
think that's where we get lost is
I
when we
agree.
define ourselves by a role or a vocation instead of really seeing the heart of what really moves us and as it moves us can move others. Yeah.
I would
um,
agree. It's living an authentic life. And, to me, it's also that thing that comes up for me as you're talking, Mary, is the difference between what I do and why I do it.
yeah.
Like, I've had, as you said, lots of different roles. I mean, my first career was in sales, for
Yeah.
Johnson and Johnson and Bayer, these great big global healthcare companies. And sometimes I say that and people are like, really? But what I loved about those jobs was um, the parts and pieces that were about the mentoring program that I was a part of. And I got to mentor new hires. And without ever realizing it, I fell in love with adult development. And, so I think there's just so much wisdom in giving ourselves permission to, as you said, to follow our heart, to let our heart lead us. And that doesn't mean that we don't have mortgages to pay and bills that we need to
Yeah.
do. And all of
Yeah.
us have day jobs. but what a gift it is to be able to identify your why, be able to articulate it, because then you know what you're looking for in the next job or in the next role, whatever that may look like.
Well, and I think that what is also what I've come to realize is you can't do it alone. And maybe that's one of the reasons why the communities that you create, knowing, some of the content that you've played with and worked with as you pulled these groups together was the content that would help people understand more of who they are. And I think that it's hard to do by yourself, like you need kind of people to reflect back to you, that you need mirrors that you can trust, who can be honest with you and can be real with you, and who can speak truth to you.
Yeah.
I also want to say that the journey of finding your gift also has to come through, and I think both of you and I have been through it. It comes through trials, and maybe that's an old-fashioned word, but I think sometimes we think it's easy to kind of find ourselves. And I honestly think it's a journey and it has its ups and downs. And I know the heartache that you went through and some of your leavings, the heartache that I went through and some of my leavings. It's messy. And we don't often talk about that. And a lot of the reasons why it's messy is because I think to some degrees, we in this world wear facades, that help us to survive, little defend itself. And the more that that defense can come down, the more the armor can come off, the more I think the pure light of who we were created to be can shine through. And it takes time.
Mm-hmm.
And it means doing some hard work personally, and it means also going through some hard things. Like, it's so interesting to me. I remember where you broke, and I remember the conversations and coming on board and how scary that was for it. Remember those conversations, talking to you for almost a month and a half, like so scared, like, what am I going to do? And how is this going to work? And so afraid. And I look at when I also, walked into my next career. It was scary as crap. And it was hard. And there was a lot of trembling that goes on, and just to try things. And I remember you like we just grab at everything in those moments. And, it's like no one can tell us not to grab. Like I think the things you grabbed at, and I smiled and just walked beside you. And the same thing happened to me, grabbing for things, and then they would drop out from underneath me. And just, I think it's so hard for us to really believe that when we walk where we're supposed to walk, the universe holds us. And
Mm.
you've heard me say that for 23 years. Um, and I've seen it true for you. Um, uh,
And I've seen it true for you.
and I've seen it true for myself. Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's tough. It's hard.
It is. And I mean, of course, it also goes to vulnerability.
Yeah.
And also giving a shout out where a shout out is due, because for the folks that are listening in, I talk about Brene Brown a lot. I would not have met Brene Brown if it had not been for Mary Shippy. I mean, what was it, Mary? 3 years that you're like, Christy, you need to do this. Christy, you need to do this. Christy. And I'm like, I'm really not interested in it, Mary. I'm busy. I'm so busy. I was so busy. But if you hadn't pushed me for that, I would have never met her. I would have never gotten certified in her work. I would not have taken my work where it has gone. But I think so much of that, when I think back to when I was first starting Edge and coming under Align leadership and incubating it there beside you, because I knew, and for the folks who are listening, you may not know this, but I knew a couple really important things when I leapt. First was, as Mary just said so beautifully, I was terrified to do it on my own. And the second thing that I also knew was the model that I had created was going to work well in large organizations. And I also knew that Fortune 500 companies being sold an brand new product for a brand new market called group coaching that didn't even exist by one woman out of Pittsburgh was going to be a pretty difficult climb from a marketing and sales standpoint. And so the idea to come into a global consultancy like Align Leadership, to have someone who had already been a mentor and a coach and a friend to me, to learn as I went, to be able to say, yes, I work for Align Leadership and we have an office in Pittsburgh and Denver. Well, gosh, boy, I all of a sudden sounded a lot bigger than my idea was. And so I think back to that and I think about, I had all of these tactics of, armoring up and, thinking about this and how was I going to do this. And when things really started rocking and rolling was when I stopped with that and I started just leaning into the vulnerability and like what Brene talks about was grounded confidence.
Yeah. 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 Ontological security, I think our old coaching school used to call it. Yeah, it's like being secure in yourself. It doesn't mean that you know everything. And it's hard. It's not easy. The words come out of our mouths. It sounds really well orchestrated, but the living of it is hard work. It's hard work. It takes commitment. And I think that's why community is so important. Like I would say to you is that part of community is helping break through that armor. Like you can't do it by yourself, you know.
Mostly
Or
because you can't see it by yourself unless you have
yeah,
someone willing to come beside you, to be your Mary Shippy, so to speak, to be a mirror that reflects that back. I didn't even realize how much armor I was carrying. I didn't even realize how limited my perspective was because of this giant helmet that I had. I didn't even realize how heavy what I was carrying was until I put it down.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I don't think that can be done by yourself. I mean, that's why I think community and relationship and having people be able to speak truth to you. Like, I think the other thing that I would say is that across the years that we worked together, what I valued was our Monday calls. I remember a lot of those conversations, Christy. Some of them were hard.
Sure.
Like, I remember asking you one time, you were so upset about something, and I said, but do you think you could survive? And you looked at me and you just stopped. And it was like, the question was, do you have enough? And the answer, of course, was yes for you at the time. But it was the disappointment of losing something, right?
Mhm.
And I remember, I want the listeners also to know that in any communication and relationship, Christy looks at to me as a mentor. But the truth is that it is a back and forth relationship, and there is so much that I learned from Christy. So it goes back and forth, Christy. Like I really appreciate and
Partnerships.
honor your respect for me, but you can't be in kind of a relationship as business partners without pushing on each other. And I'm gonna say to your audience, I remember when you were making absolutely nothing, coming into the business, and you had this big ass vision. You said to me, "We're going to make $1 million," or something like that. And I'm like looking at you, and inside I'm like, "Yeah, right. Who does she think she is? And she doesn't even know anything about this." But I didn't say anything.
You
And
didn't.
I think that that is one lesson that I have really learned over my coaching career and in life is not to laugh at other people's visions, truthfully. And that sometimes they dream bigger than you do because they have sight that you don't have. And, I think about women a lot is that we limit ourselves. And as someone who's a few years older than you, I just remember thinking to myself, she's crazy, like crazy. But I was so grateful that the wisdom of the universe kept my freaking mouth shut. And because you blew me out of the water. I remember signing one of the biggest contracts that we had ever signed. And
You leveled up, girl. We did.
no. And I'm thinking to myself again, it wasn't about the money. It was about the fact that we put a dream in place and we're willing to hold it with an open hand. And, you push me to be a better consultant. You push me to think bigger. You push me to see my own potential in a way that I didn't see my potential. So I think that's important for you to know that it's not just a one way. Appreciate, really, really appreciate your honor me and respect, but I also want people to know that it's important to open our hearts to learn from those people who are in our lives, and you are one of those people.
Thank you, my friend. Thank
Yeah.
you. That means a lot. And the other thing that comes up for me that I want to share that I think is so important. We're talking about two women that, are entrepreneurs and, merged their businesses together and then separated their businesses. And while there's so much in that, I think the piece that's coming up for me right now is the power of intergenerational friendships. And how often we look around and everybody is in the same space as us. And I think about some of the most challenging times I've gone through personally and professionally, and having someone with a different viewpoint and a different vantage point on that, who can offer us perspective because they are quite literally on a different part of the mountain than we are, is invaluable. And that requires that, number one, we ask for help from those friends, and number two, that we listen and recognize the just the incredible value that that insight can bring if we choose to allow it to. And every good decision that I have made in 10 years has been with your counsel, and I've avoided a lot of really bad ones too. That is my truth. I've avoided a lot of really bad ones where I'm like, I think I want to do this. And you're like, let's talk about it, Christy. Tell me more.
Well, and I challenge the mentors out there. People ask me lots as I enter into my retirement years. Yeah, they ask me a lot. They say things to me like, well, you shouldn't retire. You have so much to give. And I'm thinking to myself, retirement and what I have to give doesn't, like what are you talking about? I'm going to continue to give. It doesn't matter whether I'm in the work world or not in the work world. I'm in life, and again, it goes back to not the roles I play, but the call on my heart. But I would also say that I really want to challenge my generation because as I do transitional coaching, I have a lot of older people who say to me they want to leave a legacy. And my response is if you haven't left a legacy now, there is no legacy to leave. Like your life is your legacy. There's not a point in time that's a legacy. I think that's a misnomer in our culture.
Love that.
Like you're laying the legacy from the beginning of your career to the end of your career by how and what choices you make. We've talked about this, Christy, around when I had nothing, I made the choice to have a generous heart,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really hard to be generous when you don't have anything, and as I've had more and more, I continue to practice that generosity. And, when I had nothing, it was time. As I've gotten older, it's been money, but it's still time. And it's like you choose to leave your heart in the world. It's not a 2-year period of time that you're going to leave your legacy. So I say that to people that are of my age. I also say that to people that are of my age is that we have to recognize that it's not the wisdom only that we give to the younger generations that we mentor and care about, but we also have to open our hearts for them to give to us.
Yeah.
It's not a one-way street. Me, and that I continue to have young people in my life, young
Oh,
girls in my all over the world. They grow up, they disappear on me, and then I take another generation, and
mm-hmm.
then I take another generation, and then I take another generation. And, I think that's also a real truth that I share with my generation is there's lots that we have to give. but there's lots that we have to learn.
Mm.
And the generations coming up have so much to teach us. And I'm still learning from them. They still bless my heart and they still surprise me. And they give me joy. And they keep me in touch with a reality that's not just a book that I read about the change that's going on.
Yeah.
You know, it's the reality of living lives and taking the time to walk beside them. Yeah.
I love that. I love that very much. And we are just about out of time, my friend. As you think about closing out our conversation, was there anything that you wanted to share that maybe you didn't have a chance to, or any call to action that you want to leave folks with tonight?
Yeah. What I would say is um, an invitation to continue to open your eyes to the relationships around you and not be afraid, women that are out there, women in these circles. I am so grateful for the multi-generation of people that have been a part of my life. And I really encourage you to step in to those people that are around you. Um, yeah, to expand your horizons. Um, yeah, yeah, Christy, that's live with a generous heart when it comes to friendship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love
How
that.
about for you?
Um, what comes up for me as you share that is, as you do that, so here's my thoughts, my friends, that I will leave you with. As you follow that advice from Mary, give yourself permission to be seen. You know, when I think back to the times that I put on the armor, in fact, Mary, I was talking about you the other day. I was dressed for something, and someone commented on my outfit, and I said, my friend Mary used to giggle with me that I would dress for things like it was a costume. Do you remember that? And you know, like sometimes it can be physical in what we are actually going to wear. You know, there's a certain suit or something that makes me feel more confident before I walk into an important meeting, or if I'm going out on a date and I wear, you know, something that allows me to more embody the spirit that I want to be in. And for me, when it comes to partnership in terms of business and friendship, which if we're lucky they can be the same thing, giving ourselves permission to be seen fully, all the bumps and the bruises, all the mistakes. I think about how many times we've apologized to each other over the years and we still show up, you know. And I think there is also the second point that I guess I would make that I think is really important is grace, is that we extend that to the people that we care about, but that we also extend that to the people who are strangers to us. Like that is a gift that we can easily give, and one that allows people on both sides to sit in our humanness and to not be putting on a front, to putting on a costume, to playing a role, to having a title, to, you know, any of the things that often our culture pushes us to do in corporate America. Um, it's the humanness for me.
Yeah, and I think grace, honestly, Christy, this little symbol that I'm wearing is grace symbol. It's in Norse. I just picked this up in
Oh my
Iceland.
gosh, of course
Yeah,
you're wearing
yes,
that symbol right
yes.
now and we're talking about
So,
this.
but this is where I think that it's really important for women to understand is that grace allows us not only to be seen, Christy, but to be loved
Mm, amen.
and to belong. Yeah, yeah,
And isn't that what we want
yeah,
at the core of everything?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So here's to being seen. Here's to being loved. I
Yes.
thank you, my my friend, for joining me on the final Transformation Tuesday of 2023. 10 years ago, I started. Edge leadership was a twinkle in my eye. Aligned leadership made it possible. And we're just getting started because we've got another decade ahead of us. So
Yeah.
long to everyone who joined us. Thank you, my friend. We will see you again real soon.